Let's do a little quick short video to show the different frequency response of different types of cassette tapes. Normal, high bias, and metal. I figured that we're going to do a little bit of an informal demonstration here on the 3 different tapes and HX Pro. So I've got 3 tapes. These are not new tapes. In fact, this is one of the very first Sony metallic tapes. Not the contender for the best tape that they ever made, but it's still a metal tape. Here's a high bias Maxell XL2, and here's a Fuji cheap DR1. And we've got my little sine wave generator, and we can generate any frequency we want, like 15 kilohertz. A deck like this should do 15 kilohertz, no problem. They say on metal tapes it can go to 22 kilohertz, but that's not going to give you back 0 dB at 22 kilohertz. Okay, don't kid yourself. It's never going to happen. But let's just check it out. Let's see what type of frequencies we can get back on the various tapes. So I'm going to turn this off, and I'm going to dial it back. We'll dial it back to, well, 10 kilohertz. These should be able to do 10 kilohertz easily, right? So here's the type 1 tape, but here's 10 kilohertz on a type 1 tape in monitor mode. And as you can see, what's going in is 0 dB, and what's coming back is, well, left channel is a little bit lower, which is to be expected because it's along the edge of the tape, but about -4. And if I kick in the HX Pro, well, you can see that our levels jump right up to 0 dB at 10 kilohertz. Left channel, again, that's a little bit down. That could be that the head might not be completely clean. Let's try giving the head a scrub and see if that level will come up. Now remember, I have done nothing as far as cleaning the heads on this machine since I got it. The only thing I did on this was I replaced that capacitor in the motor circuit, but nothing else has been done to this thing. It's completely stock as I received it. So let's clean the heads off a bit. If you guys wonder why you're not hearing the tone in the background, it's because I'm notching it out. Otherwise it would be very obnoxious. So my left channel looks to be, you guys can't see it there, but it's 2 dB down on a normal bias tape. Let's try the same thing on a high bias tape. And I have not touched the bias control either. It's another thing that I could adjust. HX Pro is off, and with HX Pro off, I'm getting playback around -4 dB for a 0 dB recording. Turn on HX Pro, and now our levels are balanced. I'm at -2 dB. Now this is where I could adjust the bias control and bring my levels up to 0. This is where the bias control comes in handy. Now I've set on a 10 kilohertz signal. I'm playing back exactly what's going in. Source and tape, same level. That's a 10 kilohertz signal recording on a high bias tape. And then we'll do the same thing on a metal tape. You notice this tape is so old, it did not have the detection holes, so I actually had to cut them in myself. Otherwise the machine would detect it as a high bias tape and not record correctly. And HX Pro off. I'm getting back, even with the HX Pro off, I'm getting back 0 dB. My left channel's down by a bit, by about a dB. HX Pro on, and I'm getting back exactly what I put in. 10 kilohertz is coming back. As you can clearly see, 0 dB going in, 0 dB coming back. Right, with HX Pro on, HX Pro off, I'm losing a couple dB. That's at 10 kilohertz. Let's go to 15 kilohertz and see what happens. We'll do the same. So go back to the standard tape. And this time I'll set the function generator to 15 kilohertz. 15 kilohertz. Run. 0 dB going in. HX Pro off. First of all, we can hear a whine in the background. We can hear some beating with the bias oscillator. I don't know if you can hear it or not. I can certainly hear it in the background. Dolby will kind of reduce that, but you'll notice that the level's coming back. Recorded 0 dB. The levels coming back are barely there. We're at like minus 20 dB. HX Pro on. Bam. Okay. Now we're getting back, well, minus 6 dB on the right channel, minus 10 dB on the left. This is a 15 kilohertz signal recording on a, you guys can probably hear that loud now. Let's go to the next tape, which is a high bias tape. Again, now listen to the tone. You're really hearing the 15 kilohertz tone that I'm recording beating with the bias oscillator. Again, with no HX Pro, I've got like minus 20 dB coming back. I kick on the HX Pro and it's now giving me 8 dB coming back. And if I adjust the bias here, we can probably bring it up a bit, but still, it's pretty low by comparison. Let's go to the metal tape now. Here's where the metal tape is really going to shine. HX Pro off. Record. Okay, I've got about 8 dB coming back. Watch what happens when I kick on the HX Pro. We're getting back damn near 0 dB at 15 kilohertz. With the tape hiss, of course. Kick on Dolby. Dolby B gets rid of that noise from the bias oscillator. Dolby C actually brings my levels pretty much to 0, even with the HX Pro off. Getting cold, I had to turn the heat on, but we can look at the meters on this. Anyway, let's try this at even a higher frequency. Let's get stupid. Let's turn this up to 19 kilohertz. Again, on the metal tape. This time my levels are a little bit hotter, so we'll just back them back down to 0 dB. Again, HX Pro off or on. HX Pro is off right now. Record. And we're like minus 10 dB. HX Pro on. And our output now, we're getting back minus 4 for a 0 dB input. Again, on a very, very, very old first generation metal tape. I'm sure if I were to dig up a modern metal tape, like one of those fancy ceramic shell tapes that were about 18 bucks a pop, it probably would do better. But we're looking at this on the very first generation Sony metal tape. It's from the, well, I'm going to say early 1980s, because it was before they even had the detection switches. So whenever this one came out, but it's old, very, very old. We'll take it one step higher. Let's just take this to 20 kilohertz. Zero dB. Might as well leave the HX Pro on because it's going to be needed. And we're still getting back minus 4 dB. Pretty damn good. I mean, we'll see nothing. If I put this other crappy tape in, in fact, if I play with the bias, I can get it to minus 2. I'm only losing 2 dB. 0 dB going in, that's minus 4. But it's pretty darn close. And let's take it to 22 kilohertz, just because that's what the claimed maximum frequency response on this tape deck is. 22 kilohertz, 0 dB going in. We're at -6, -8, -8. But both channels are pretty close to each other, see? We're getting a bit of discrepancy there just because of the tape itself, some variations in the tape, but it's doing excellent. Excellent. 22 kilohertz. Who would have thought of that out of a cassette? Now, of course, these other tapes, I don't expect that we're going to see anything, which we don't. Minus 20 dB is all I'm seeing on a high bias tape, and the good old iron oxide, we should see probably nothing. And actually, I shouldn't laugh because it's doing about -12, but I'm sure that there's probably a lot of noise in there with the bias oscillation mixing in. Yeah, that's what we're hearing. We're hearing the bias oscillator mix in, and if I turn on the MPX filter, yeah, we're hearing the bias oscillator just heterodyning with the signal going in. But certainly with the metal tape, as you can see, metal tape is very capable, even at 22 kilohertz. It's we're at between -6 and -8. It's kind of jumping around a bit there. So -8 there. But yeah, it's holding in pretty good. Now we go back and put this into something more reasonable, like 12 kilohertz. Oops. We'll get back what we put into it. I know, it's probably driving you guys crazy, especially you guys wearing headphones. Sorry about that. 12 kilohertz. I should have warned you guys. It would have been loud. But yeah, it's looking pretty good. Anyway, I just thought I'd do a little experimentation with this thing. And even the standard tape is looking pretty good. I'm getting back what I'm putting in at 12 kilohertz. 0 dB. Just had to tweak the bias, and that's another thing. If you, with these decks with the bias control, how you set these things up. If you want to get the best performance from a particular tape, well, you do need a tone generator for one. Some tape decks have the tone generator built in, which is nice. This one does not. I wish it did, but it doesn't. But with a tone generator, I set my tone. I'll go in and I'll set my tone to 0. Usually we do it for like 400 hertz or 440, but 400 hertz is a good one. 400 hertz, set your level. Right, set your level to 0 dB. Leave your bias control set to right in the middle. Record and monitor your playback, and then adjust the level control here to get 0 dB. Right, now we're zeroed out for our 400 hertz tone, and then we can go back and we can change this to say 10 kilohertz. 10 kilohertz, where are we? 10 kilohertz. And now we adjust the bias. We trim the bias to bring our level back to 0. Now I've just tweaked the machine for this type of tape. Level is set 400 hertz, bias tweaked to get 0 dB back for a 0 dB signal going in. There we go. So now this machine is set. to record the best it can on this particular tape. It's really easy when you've got a 3-head deck. Now you can do the same thing with a 2-head deck. You won't so much have the level control, but you will have a bias control on a lot of 2-head decks. You make a recording and you adjust, you record your level at 0 dB, record your 10 kilohertz tone, play it back, and you have to basically adjust the bias slightly a little bit each time until your playback comes back the same. A little more work on a 2-head deck. 3-head deck, it's a piece of cake. My TAC 3-head deck has the tone generator built in, but while flutter wise, this thing destroys it. Anyway, that's just a little bit of fun with my tape deck here, and I figured I would just throw something together quickly tonight. I got another Technics 3-head Dolby B. It's an old one, but a 3-head deck. We'll be looking at that one shortly. Thanks for watching.